Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The morning had started like any other at Spencer Publications, the winter sunlight filtering through the towering glass windows of the office, reflecting off the sleek surfaces and polished floors, but by the time Finn entered the building, a sense of dread had already settled over him, a weight in his chest that refused to dissipate. He had just returned from a sleepless night at home, haunted by the series of events that had unfolded over the past week, each one like a cruel domino tipping into the next. Will Spencer, normally vibrant and full of energy, had been growing increasingly lethargic, complaining of fatigue and strange nausea that seemed to come from nowhere, and no matter how Finn tried to reassure himself, his medical instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. As he walked through the familiar hallways past employees who were bustling about, unaware of the storm brewing, he tried to piece together what he had observed, the subtle changes in Will's behavior, the almost imperceptible decline in his physical health, the whispered rumors of tension in the family that now seemed to have concrete, terrifying consequences, and he felt that sick, gnawing premonition that sometimes doctors know even before the symptoms become undeniable. Someone had deliberately interfered with Will's health, and it wasn't an accident. Finn's mind was racing, trying to recall every detail from the past days, every conversation that might hold a clue, every unusual interaction that could now be interpreted in hindsight as sinister. And as he reached Will's office, where the young Spencer sat slumped in his chair, pale and unusually quiet, Finn's heart sank further, because nothing about this looked normal. Will's usual spark, his innate charm and energy was gone, replaced by a hollow weariness that seemed to draw the light out of the room itself. Finn moved to his side immediately, gently placing a hand on Will's arm, feeling the unnatural chill of his skin, and the moment he touched him, his medical intuition screamed louder than ever. This was deliberate, calculated, something that no illness could have caused naturally, and the more he examined the situation, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to align, forming a picture he could not unsee. A horrifying truth that made his stomach twist into knots and his hands tremble even as he fought to remain composed. He remembered the strange prescription that Will had mentioned in passing, a new supplement he had been trying, the curious way a few members of the family had been unusually insistent about his health and habits, and the subtle but alarming discrepancies in the medical records he had discreetly accessed, each anomaly now screaming in his mind like a warning bell, leading him inexorably to a single, gut-wrenching conclusion. Someone had poisoned Will Spencer. The realization hit Finn like a thunderclap, sending a shockwave through his entire being, because he understood that this wasn't just an attack on Will. This was an attack on everything the Spencer family represented, on the stability and safety of the people he cared about, and it was deeply personal. He thought of the countless moments he had spent with Will, the trust and camaraderie that had formed between them, and he felt a surge of anger so potent it almost clouded his reason. Finn knew that he had to act, to confront the reality and expose the truth, but the path to that revelation was fraught with peril, because in the intricate web of relationships at Spencer Publications, almost everyone had a motive, and almost everyone had something to hide. As Finn's mind raced, he replayed the subtle interactions he had observed between Will and certain individuals in the family, the tension in the conversations, the barely perceptible smirks, the defensive body language, and each memory now seemed sinister, as though it were a piece of evidence he had overlooked in the past. He felt his chest tighten, knowing that the time for hesitation had passed. He needed to act quickly, decisively, but also carefully, because a single misstep could jeopardize not only Will's life but the fragile balance of trust within the Spencer family. Gathering his courage, Finn approached Will, speaking softly but firmly, trying to gauge his awareness and condition. Will's eyes, usually bright and animated, now reflected confusion and fear, and Finn's heart ached at the vulnerability staring back at him. He reassured him, keeping his tone calm, even as the storm of revelation raged inside his own mind. "Will," Finn said gently, placing both hands on his shoulders, "I need you to trust me. I think someone's been harming you. It's not just illness. I believe you've been poisoned." The words hung in the air like a dagger, sharp and unavoidable, and the shock on Will's face mirrored the horror that Finn himself felt internally. There was a moment of stunned silence, where time seemed suspended, the hum of the office fading into the background, leaving only the weight of the accusation and the terror of its implications. Will's breathing quickened, and he struggled to process what Finn had just revealed. The idea so alien and terrifying that it threatened to topple him into panic. Poisoned, Will whispered, his voice barely audible, trembling with disbelief. Who would do that to me? Finn's own jaw tightened, anger and concern intermingling, as he carefully chose his next words. I don't have all the answers yet, he admitted. But I've been going over everything, your medications, your recent health changes, interactions with certain people. The signs are clear, Will. Someone wanted to hurt you. And it's closer to home than you think. The gravity of the revelation sank into Will's expression, his face paling even further, and Finn could see the inner turmoil, the storm of fear, betrayal, and confusion churning inside him. Every instinct in Finn's body urged him to act, to not only protect Will but to uncover the culprit before it was too late. He had to navigate carefully, because in a family as complex and intertwined as the Spencers, the truth could destroy as easily as it could heal. Finn spent the next few hours meticulously gathering evidence, retracing Will's steps, examining every pill, every supplement, every suspicious interaction with a forensic eye honed from years of medical training. The more he uncovered, the more the puzzle pieces fell into place, painting a picture so shocking, so devastating, that Finn felt a cold dread settle over him. When he finally confronted the undeniable truth, his hands shook, not from weakness but from the sheer weight of revelation. The poisoning had not been a random act, not a mistake, but a calculated betrayal by someone within the inner circle, someone who had access, motive, and the chilling willingness to cross the line of morality. Finn's mind flashed through the possibilities, the suspects, the motives, old rivalries, resentments, jealousy, and ambition, and each thought twisted the knot of fear and rage tighter within him. He understood that revealing this truth would shatter lives, friendships, and the delicate veneer of family loyalty that had held for so long. Yet he also knew that silence was no longer an option. Will deserved the truth, no matter how painful, and Finn was the only one equipped to deliver it, the only one who could act as the shield against further harm. As he prepared for the confrontation, Finn felt a surge of resolve, a determination that tempered the fear. He would not allow the perpetrator to succeed. He would expose the treachery, protect Will at all costs, and confront the moral rot that had allowed such an atrocity to occur under the family's roof. And so, with a deep breath, Finn faced Will, looked him in the eyes with unwavering determination, and said the words that would change everything, words heavy with both truth and consequence. Will, you've been poisoned. And I know who did it. In that instant, the world seemed to tilt on its axis, the office fading into the background as shock, disbelief, and fear collided with a desperate need for justice. Will's eyes widened, a mixture of horror and betrayal etched across his features, and Finn felt the full weight of responsibility press down upon him. The revelation was seismic, a truth that would send shockwaves through the family, the company, and the very fabric of their lives. As Finn prepared to guide Will through the next steps, to navigate the treacherous waters of suspicion, investigation, and confrontation, he understood that nothing would ever be the same. The bonds of trust, once taken for granted, had been shattered. The quiet calm of the Spencer office was gone, replaced by an undercurrent of tension, suspicion, and fear. Every glance, every word, every interaction could now be fraught with hidden meaning, and Finn realized that his journey had only just begun. He would have to tread carefully, balancing the immediate need to protect Will with the long-term strategy required to unmask the perpetrator, because in a world as ruthless and complex as the one they inhabited, a single misstep could have catastrophic consequences. And yet, even amidst the fear, Finn felt a flicker of determination, a spark of resolve that refused to be extinguished. He would uncover the truth, expose the betrayal, and ensure that Will not only survived but had justice served, no matter the personal cost. The next moments, hours, and days would be a battle of wits, courage, and morality, a fight that would test every facet of their characters, revealing the depths of human frailty and the heights of loyalty, love, and bravery. And as Finn stood by Will's side, watching the storm of shock and terror play across his friend's face, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The world of the Spencers, once familiar and secure, had been irrevocably altered, shattered by the poisonous hand of betrayal, and Finn was now the sentinel, the guardian of truth in a landscape defined by deception, greed, and ambition. Every step forward would be perilous, every decision critical, and the echoes of this revelation would reverberate through their lives forever. Yet even in the midst of chaos, Finn understood the gravity of his role, the moral imperative to protect the innocent, to confront the guilty, and to navigate the treacherous waters of family loyalty, love, and corporate ambition. And so, with Will trembling beside him, Finn steeled himself, bracing for the confrontation, the investigation, and the inevitable fallout, knowing that the path ahead would be dangerous, unpredictable, and emotionally harrowing, but also knowing that the truth, no matter how shattering, was a weapon more powerful than fear, more potent than deception, and more essential than silence in a world where betrayal had poisoned the very air they breathed. Finn felt the chill of dread linger long after he had delivered the devastating truth to Will. The young Spencer sat in stunned silence, his mind whirling with disbelief, confusion, and an almost paralyzing sense of betrayal. Finn's heart ached as he watched Will grapple with the idea that someone within the family, someone they had trusted implicitly, could commit such a heinous act. The office, once a place of business and routine, now felt like a cage, the walls closing in with the weight of secrets, lies, and looming confrontation. Finn knew that the moments after the revelation were critical. Will needed reassurance, guidance, and protection, yet he also needed to process the reality of his situation without succumbing to panic. "Will," Finn said gently, kneeling beside him, his hand steady on Will's trembling shoulders. "I know this is overwhelming, but you're not alone. We'll figure this out. I promise you we'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll make sure the person responsible is held accountable." Will's eyes glistened with tears, a mix of fear and anger swirling within them, and he drew a shuddering breath, as if the words themselves were not enough to stabilize the whirlwind inside him. "But, Finn," he whispered, his voice cracking, "how could someone do this? Who would want to hurt me like this?" Finn hesitated, carefully weighing his words. He knew the answer could shatter not only Will, but the entire fragile equilibrium of the Spencer family. Yet the truth demanded to be told. "It's someone very close, Will," Finn admitted, his voice low and serious. "Someone who had access to your health, to your daily routine. I've been reviewing the medications, the supplements, and the interactions you've had recently. The pattern is unmistakable. This wasn't accidental." The horror in Will's eyes deepened, and Finn could see the way his friend's mind raced, trying to reconcile the warm, loving interactions he had with certain family members with the shadow of betrayal now looming over him. He knew the next steps had to be strategic. Rushing to accuse anyone without proof could provoke panic, denial, or even further harm. Finn carefully explained his plan. First, they would gather all medical evidence, secure any medications, supplements, and documentation that could provide clues. Then they would investigate interactions with those close to Will, reviewing recent communications, meetings, and events that might indicate motive or opportunity. Each step had to be deliberate, precise, and discreet. Any hint of suspicion being discovered prematurely could trigger panic or cover-ups, making the truth even harder to uncover. Will nodded, absorbing Finn's words, though his hands shook and his face remained pale. "Okay," he whispered finally. "Whatever we need to do, let's do it. I can't sit here and just wait." Finn smiled faintly, trying to inject some measure of hope into the dark cloud enveloping them. "You're strong, Will. We'll get through this together. But you have to stay careful. Trust has been broken, and we need to rebuild it step by step, starting with the facts." As they began the painstaking process of gathering evidence, Finn noticed subtle changes in Will's demeanor. Moments of hesitation, eyes darting to corners of the room, a nervous tension in his movements that hadn't been there before. Finn understood immediately that the revelation of betrayal had fundamentally altered Will's sense of security, and he knew that he would have to remain vigilant not only in protecting Will physically, but also in shielding him emotionally from the corrosive effects of fear and suspicion. Their first step was to secure Will's office, combing through files, drawers, and medical records. Finn meticulously documented each finding, photographing labels, cross-referencing medications, and noting any anomalies. It was slow work, exhausting in its detail, but Finn refused to cut corners. This investigation was not just a duty but a moral imperative. The evidence began to form a disturbing pattern. Certain medications that Will had been prescribed recently had suspiciously high concentrations, while others appeared to have been tampered with or mislabeled. Supplements that he had been instructed to take regularly had been switched or contaminated in ways that would explain the onset of fatigue, nausea, and weakness. Each discovery brought Finn closer to the horrifying truth, but also deeper into a web of suspicion that threatened to ensnare everyone around Will. Finn realized that confronting the suspect prematurely could have devastating consequences, so he decided to involve only a few trusted allies, carefully balancing the need for support with the risk of alerting the perpetrator. Among the few he confided in was Steffi, whose loyalty to Will was unwavering, and whose investigative instincts were sharp. She arrived at the office without hesitation, her expression a mix of determination and alarm. "Finn," she said, her voice low, "I've heard and I want to help. Will deserves justice, and whoever did this, they can't get away with it." Together, the three of them, Will, Finn, and Steffi, formed a small, discreet coalition dedicated to uncovering the truth. They worked in shifts, examining every angle, every detail, every interaction that could provide insight. Finn reviewed surveillance footage, tracking movements in and out of Will's office. Steffi cross-referenced schedules and social interactions, noting discrepancies or suspicious behavior. Will, despite his fear and exhaustion, provided insight into the emotional subtleties, recalling conversations, gestures, and attitudes that, in hindsight, seemed laden with hidden intent. Days passed, each one intensifying the sense of urgency and dread. Will's health fluctuated, sometimes stabilizing briefly, only to plunge again as the subtle effects of the poisoning continued to manifest. Finn monitored him constantly, adjusting treatments, administering antidotes, and keeping meticulous records of every symptom. The emotional toll was immense. Finn felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, knowing that any misstep could endanger Will's life, while Will wrestled with the reality that someone he trusted might be capable of unimaginable betrayal. Then came the breakthrough. A small but undeniable clue hidden in plain sight. Finn discovered a hidden discrepancy in the dosage records of a supplement that Will had been prescribed. Cross-referencing the dates and times with staff access logs, Finn pinpointed a narrow window in which the contamination must have occurred. It was a critical piece of evidence, one that narrowed the list of potential suspects to a handful of individuals with both opportunity and motive. The revelation ignited a fire in Finn's resolve. They now had a direction, a path forward, and a sense of control in a situation that had felt overwhelmingly chaotic. Steffi's sharp instincts complemented Finn's medical expertise perfectly, as they began to piece together not only the how but the why. What could drive someone so close to Will to inflict harm? They explored motives ranging from jealousy to ambition, from resentment to revenge, each scenario more disturbing than the last. Will, for his part, began to confront the emotional impact, the raw betrayal that gnawed at his trust and left him vulnerable in ways he had never anticipated. Finn offered constant support, gently reminding him of the facts, encouraging him to focus on evidence rather than speculation, and reinforcing the importance of patience in their methodical pursuit of justice. Then came a fateful evening that would change everything. Finn, reviewing the evidence late at night in Will's office, noticed an anomaly in the recent communications between a key family member and an outside contact. The message content was innocuous on its surface, but the metadata, timestamps, and frequency revealed an alarming pattern. Someone had been monitoring Will's health, tracking his routines, and orchestrating the subtle poisoning without drawing suspicion. Finn's stomach churned as he realized the sophistication of the plot. This wasn't a moment of rash malice. It was a calculated, premeditated attack, executed with precision, patience, and chilling disregard for human life. He shared his findings with Will and Steffi immediately. The tension in the room was palpable, each of them acutely aware that they were now closing in on the perpetrator. As they compared notes, cross-referenced behavior, and reviewed access logs, the evidence converged on a single individual whose proximity, opportunity, and past grievances aligned with the emerging picture. Will's eyes widened in disbelief, a mix of horror, betrayal, and incredulity flashing across his face. "No, it can't be," he whispered, his voice trembling. Finn placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "I wish it weren't true, Will. I wish I were wrong. But the evidence is undeniable." The revelation shattered Will's sense of security. The person he had trusted implicitly, someone he had considered a part of his inner circle, had orchestrated his poisoning, manipulating circumstances to hide their intentions. Finn could see the emotional impact etched in every line of Will's face. The shock, the betrayal, the dawning realization that the family he had relied